Hi everyone, welcome to Creative Thrive, the podcast where imagination meets inspiration and stories of creative passion light the way. I'm your host, Tabatha Coffey. Today we're diving into the mind of a true modern-day philosopher, poet, and thought leader. He's an acclaimed author and strategist who navigates the intersection of creativity, spirituality, and the digital age with a unique blend of insight and humor. His work challenges us to look beyond the surface and encourages a journey of self-discovery and enlightenment in a world often dominated by distraction and digital noise. From the pages of his celebrated books to his viral social media content, he has a knack for distilling really complex ideas into accessible wisdom that resonates with such a diverse audience. But his journey wasn't always aligned with the clarity and purpose he embodies today. It was through embracing his authentic self and harnessing the transformative power of creativity that he has forged a path that's as enlightening as it is inspiring. Today, he is at the forefront of blending ancient wisdom with modern dilemmas, guiding all of us through the maze of modern existence with poetry, humor, and deep spiritual insight. Whether you're seeking guidance on navigating the challenges of the digital age or looking for creative inspiration, today's guest offers a beacon of light, and he literally wrote the book on being creative. Please welcome to Creative Thrive, James McCrae. Hi, James.
Hello. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to our chat today.
Yeah, so am I. This podcast is all about celebrating creatives and celebrating, which I so loved. You know, I just finished that you kindly sent to me your latest book, The Art of You, and I loved that you talk about it's not the end result, it's the journey. And that's what we really, I'm paraphrasing your words, but that's what we talk about here. It's really celebrating creatives and the journey that creatives go through to inspire other people. So let me ask you to dive in. If someone hasn't read the book yet, which they will by the end of this, believe me, it's must reading for everyone. Can you share with us, James, what initially sparked your journey into writing and creativity? Was there a pivotal moment that set you on this path?
You know, there was not, because that's been, I feel, has been my life since I was a little, and I feel like I'm not alone in that. You know, I feel like, and so many people I speak to resonate with this, but I feel like I was a very creative kid, and I feel like most kids are creative when they're given the space to be creative. And I grew up in a very small town in rural Minnesota. And, you know, everywhere you grow up has trade-offs. There's pros and cons. So I didn't have a lot of culture or activities or stimulation or, you know, opportunities around me. But I had a lot of space just to be in my own zone without a lot of social pressure. And I feel like I had space to cultivate that creativity. So instead of, you know, suppressing that part of myself, I just embraced it. And of course, I've had, you know, it's hard to live in this society as an artist, as a creator in so many ways. So I definitely had some detours, you know, professionally, where I had to support myself. And, you know, I spent many years in advertising. But you know, I started writing poetry when I was like 13, 14 years old, and I was painting a lot as a teenager. And my creativity is taking a lot of, you know, turns. I've experimented with a lot of different mediums. You know, I've done professional work in advertising. I've written, you know, poetry. So my creativity is always changing and always shifting, but it's always been there. And I've only embraced it more in recent years now that I'm, teaching creativity and helping other creators with their own visions. So I feel like I think Pablo Picasso said, "Is the artist is the child who never grew up," kind of thing. So I feel like I was born creative. I feel like so many others are as well. And then the ones who become artists as adults are the ones that refuse to let that inner child and that inner artist be suppressed by all of the demands of the fast-paced society that we live in today.
Well, that leads me to, one of the things that you stated in your book, and I've heard you speak about on social media, is that the journey to creativity begins not with learning, but with unlearning the layers of social programming that distance us from our innate creative selves. So, in a world that seems to prioritize conformity and productivity over us embracing our imagination, our playfulness, and our intuition, because I believe, and we'll get into that, intuition is a big part of creativity. How do we, it's two questions, how do we move forward to embrace those things when we are quite programmed to not be as creative as we were with children? And it sounds like your parents and your family and your community encouraged you to do that as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely did, and that was just part of my upbringing. It was a very very small town, and people would just get whatever jobs were there, whether it was a plumber or a factory worker or a mailman or there were only so many options, right? So like, it wasn't like we had to start preparing for the SATs at a young age and these kind of things. So, and my parents were very loving and supportive, and I don't know if they had any other ambitions for me, but when they definitely encouraged me to explore my own creativity. And having done that, in terms of how others can pursue a creative path, I mean, the first thing that I would say is, like, you have to really be fearless in your own belief in yourself as an artist. And I really mean that, because in a way it's you against the world in a lot of ways. And of course it's amazing if you can find like a creative community. I'm lucky to have a lot of artists as friends and poets as friends, and especially through social media I've cultivated a lot of relationships with other creators. But not everyone has that, right? So, and I didn't always have that either. So it's so important to like believe in your own inner vision more so than all of the external distractions around you. It's like, and that takes a lot of training to do. It takes a lot of like discipline and commitment. Like you need to, like, I feel like I made a commitment to myself to, like, I'm going to, be an artist, be a poet, even if it's not easy, even if like I have to get another job to support myself. Like, I'm still a poet, and I happen to be working another job, right? But I still have that vision of myself and that belief in myself as a poet. And honestly, for me, the other part that's super important is there's nothing else I would rather be doing, right? Because I get up every morning excited to create. And even when I was working in advertising, I wrote my first book while I was working full time in a Madison Avenue ad agency in Manhattan. So I was already busy. I was already working on a lot of different projects, and I had all these different client deadlines, and just the fast-paced advertising New York City career. But I would still get up early to work on my own projects and my own book. And that's the only reason I could do that is because I really enjoyed doing it. Because I really think that creativity is our nature. and we can either suppress our nature or we can express our nature. So for me, finding joy in that creativity is so crucial. I think that like, yeah, discipline is important, and of course you need to like have a disciplined practice.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's not coming from a place of like love and fulfillment, you're not going to find that discipline. So that's the most important thing, is to like find that love affair with your work, no matter what it is, and make it fun and make it playful, and let that guide you. So I feel like it can be therapeutic just to sit down and create. So there's a lot of benefits even outside of the art that you're making. There's inner benefits of healing, and it's cathartic. So just having that dedication and making it fun, for me, has been what has allowed me to carry on even when there were so many obstacles around me.
I think the fun part is the thing that, as grown-ups and perhaps as children as well, we forget about, because the fun of just creating and putting something out there, I think, turns the temperature down on the fear, because you're enjoying it. So you're not as scared about the judgment or what are people going to say. You really just sit in this lovely bubble for yourself of producing or doing whatever you really enjoy that stimulates you and ignites your passion. And I agree with you. It's incredibly healing to be able to do that. And I think that, in my experience, especially with creatives that I deal with in the hair and beauty space, predominantly a lot of people get stuck because they forget the fun, they forget the joy, and they look at, oh, this is my job, I've got to please these people, this is my passion, I've got to post again on Instagram, oh, what am I going to do? And all the joy and the juice and the passion gets sucked out of it. It's like a vortex.
Yeah, no question. And that's happened to me as well. And something else that I would add, it's like, okay, let's say that you're in a relationship for a long time. It might start to feel monotonous. It might start to feel boring. You might kind of want to look around and try something different. So it's so important to keep spicing things up, by which I mean trying new things.
Mm.
And I love creative experimentation. So like, and one of the things that I say is, in case of emergency, break routine.
Oh, I love that.
Because
putting that in the repertoire.
Yeah, because even like, because like, just for an example, like I went to college for graphic design. I've always been balancing writing with visual arts, right? So, and that's why I make memes and my social media content, and even my books are very visual, with a lot of graphics and charts and diagrams and illustrations and memes. I like my writing to have a visual experience as well. So I went to college for graphic design because I loved, making logos, making posters, playing around with graphics and typography and colors. But once I was doing that professionally, and it became my job, and it became more like people telling me what to do, like the clients and, whatever, my account managers or whatever it is, I started to lose the passion for it, because it was less creative expression and it was more like taking orders and like making things look a certain way. So once it felt like I no longer had passion for it, I pivoted and I became a brand strategist. So I kept working in the advertising industry, but I pivoted to being a brand strategist, which is a little bit more of a high level thinker. And I was doing brand messaging and client presentations. So I just kind of, jumped from one pool to a different pool, a bigger pool, really. And that renewed my passion for my work. And then even when I was doing brand strategy, at a certain point, many years later, I felt really stuck in that career. And I felt like I wasn't advancing in my career. I had lost passion for the work I was doing. And I felt like I had reached a dead end. And I surrendered, and I had this moment of surrendering where I just let go of control and forcing my career to go a certain way. And it was in that surrender that I started writing poetry again. So I found a new mode for my expression. So it's so important to experiment, try new things, and when things feel stale, break routine, try something random, try a creative medium that you've never explored before. And that's just how to keep things exciting instead of feeling stuck in the same place.
I love that. What I'm also hearing is pivoting, right? Like, don't feel. I, I think what happens sometimes, and what people have shared with me, is they feel like, oh, I'm giving up, so I failed, right? I'm not good enough to keep going. When really just the passion, the gas has been turned down on the passion light. So you need to recharge that, which is what I'm hearing you say. And the other thing is pivot, right? Like when you're telling me this story, I just keep hearing, oh, James evolved. Like James just kept evolving and growing and morphing and changing. And obviously, our creative pursuits do that as we change, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's so many different ways to do it. If, because in some ways you do need to commit to things, and it's a fine line because you don't want to abandon things when they get hard either, right? So it's hard. You have to really, everyone's got a different journey. And like, for me, it's like, oh, I'm going to stop doing my social media content because my last few posts didn't perform well. But it's like, well, this is how I reach my audience. So I'm going to find a way to, keep going. But there are other times when it's like, oh, okay, like actually this chapter of my life is closed. It's time to move on. So whether you're pivoting within what you're doing or trying something completely new, because that's for me, like all my favorite artists were these bold experimenters who were pivoting, because I think you'll do better work if it's a true expression of where you are. So like you don't want to be the band, like we've all like seen a band that maybe like had a big hit, right? And then they keep trying to replicate the success of that hit.
Yeah.
And it feels like they're forcing it, and it might even feel a little bit sad. And they never quite reach that point of that hit, or maybe they do have another one. But my favorite artists are people like David Bowie or Bob Dylan, who their entire career would take these meandering paths, right? Because it was true to where they were, and they were following their own inspiration. And even if it was unexpected or different, it kept their music feeling fresh and relevant. And that's what has allowed them to have such long careers, because they never got stuck in a rut. They would evolve as people, and then they would allow their creativity and their art to evolve with them. Even if people didn't understand, it's about following that inner vision, again, more so than all of the external distractions that are trying to push you in a specific direction.
One of the things that the quotes that I highlighted, and I highlighted many from your latest book, The Art of You, is, although we are all born with creative potential, creativity and inspiration are like muscles. We have to nurture them or they will atrophy. And that is jumping out to me because that sounds like what you're saying. It's really, it sounds like it's being authentic, really, isn't it? I mean, it's pivoting as you pivot, growing as you grow, experimenting as different things come into your field of vision that light you up and excite you, and then overcoming that fear to try something new or do something in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I'm a big believer in building creative endurance.
Tell me about that.
Well, I just think that our rituals that we do each day become our habits, and our habits just become our lifestyle. So like creativity might feel, especially when you're trying something new, it can feel difficult or awkward, or you might not be sure like how to proceed, and you might get frustrated. But when you do something habitually, it's just like working out. Like, yes, if you never work out and then you do, you might get really tired. You might feel really sore. You might not have a great time. But when you do it consistently and make it a habit and have certain creative rituals, then it becomes, that's how you reach flow state. You know, it's kind of like I compare it to dancing, right? Like if you want to be a dancer,
Mm-hmm.
you have at first you need to like learn the moves, right? You need to like memorize the moves. But the whole point is to practice enough times where your body memorizes how to do it. So it becomes unconscious. And then you just can let go and allow your body to move fluidly without having to think about it. So that's kind of what a flow state is.
Mm-hmm.
But it requires that repetition enough times you can practice, 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 but then let go. And then it happens unconsciously, effortlessly. So that's for me what creative endurance is. And that's how you reach flow state is just first having that dedication so you can let go and have it be effortlessly move through you.
So, what practices or exercises do you recommend to
Mm-hmm.
help people, first of all, probably reconnect with their natural creative abilities and to then move into building that habit that then turns into flow?
You know, I'm a big believer in creative ritual. And for me, you know, that is my devotional practice, right? So I believe in, for me personally, I believe in, you know, having um, a consistent process, a consistent time of day, a consistent place I go. For me, it's first thing in the morning because I think that in the morning, that's when the channel is most open,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you go throughout the day, you're going to get all these distractions and you have meetings and podcasts and other obligations. So for me, first thing in the morning is when I'm most fresh. And I start by meditating because I think that I'm just tuning in to another, you know, as a writer, I often feel like my best ideas are being channeled through me more so than me dictating them in a certain way. So meditation is what helps to open that channel of intuition. And you know, it depends on what I'm working on, whether it's a book or social media content. You know, you know, if it's a book, it might be like, well, this is the next chapter, so I need to like write about this, and it's a nonfiction book, so it's more like teaching. But what I really try to do is slow down my busy mind, which is why I meditate, and I just listen to what's trying to come through me. I think that people talk about the muse, people talk about, you know, where do ideas come from? I think it's just our own intuition. And I think intuition is a portal that connects us with literally other dimensions. You know, there are dimensions beyond the physical world that our intuition connects us with. And I try my best I call it listening to the space between my thoughts and see what's trying to come through me. I feel like creativity is very much a purge. So, you know, it's kind of like we go through life and we experience events, emotions, maybe even traumas, and the body stores all of this up.
Mm-hmm.
And we can either suppress it or we can express it. And I think it's similar to like going into a sauna or a sweat lodge and our body sweats out those toxins. Um, you know, some people go to South America and drink plant medicine and
Mm-hmm.
purge in that way. And I believe that creativity is similar to that as a purge, as an energetic purge. And it's similar to therapy in that sense as well, because a good therapist is there helping you explore your inner world so you can pull out insights. And for me, that's what my writing practice is. I'm exploring my inner world. I'm seeing what I find. I'm seeing where I feel discomfort or stuck energy. and then I'm purging it through my words into my notebook. And there's a cathartic release that takes place. So I really try to see what's trying to come out of me, and be open to where that intuition leads me.
I love that I haven't looked at it as a purge. I feel, and we talk about a lot on this podcast, that it's a birthing.
Yes,
Putting your
exactly.
creativity out is a birthing.
Yeah.
And it is sometimes an explosion of it has to be released. It is a release that cannot, the pressure builds up so much inside that you actually need to physically release it out of your body, which is purging. It's a great analogy, I think, for people to realize, because I feel like it's incredibly unhealthy to hold your creativity inside.
Yes.
And not put it out, whatever that looks like for you. I think you have alluded to this in your book. Creativity isn't about an end result.
Mm-hmm.
It is not just a 3D, oh, I made this, right?
Yeah.
It is a process. It's not the material of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really both, because I love, I get inspired by seeing other people's art.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's why, people ask me all the time, like, how do I balance my relationship with social media? Right? Because social media can be such a toxic place. But it can also be a place of great creativity and artistic expression. But just, I find so much inspiration in the people that I follow, and I try to curate my feed so I'm seeing things that inspire me, and I listen to music that inspires me, and I read poems that inspire me. So I do love that end result. I do love that end product, because that's where the transmission happens. And I love other people's art so much that I'm so motivated to make art that other people love as well, because that just feeds my soul. So just the
Agreed.
idea
Agreed.
that I could feed someone's soul with my own art, that's just like a thrilling idea, because it's been so beneficial in my own life. But I think that the way you create art that does have that transmission that feeds someone's soul, it's got to be a direct transmission from your own soul.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is about that process. And I one of my favorite catchphrases is, it's not about being good at creativity, it's about creativity being good for you. Because I think there's so many therapeutic values to doing that, and just being in that moment, and you can't force it, but following where that muse leads you is going to create better results than focusing too much on that end result. And that I always like to save the inner critic for the very end. I try to be as free in my creativity without self-censorship. So what I like to say is, I give my ego a different job. So like, when I'm writing, when I am let's say when I'm channeling ideas from my own intuition, I let my ego get out of the way, and during that moment of creation is not the time to judge or critique or evaluate your work. It's just not. So my ego knows that, okay, it's going to get a chance to review this at the end. If it needs to be edited, it can be edited. But during that moment of creation, I do my best to set my ego aside and let it flow without judgment. And that's where my mindfulness practice of like meditation really comes in handy. So I can listen to my intuition without worrying about the judgment from my ego.
Yeah, which is incredibly important. And I just want to clarify to anyone listening, I'm not saying that your creativity shouldn't be manifested in a product, and that
Sure.
I am inspired by other people's art as well, but I can go to a friend's house and have them make me dinner that is the most creative and inspiring thing, because they've shown me something different, and also put their creativity and their passion and their love and authenticity into something. And that is a creative process as
Oh,
well,
yeah. I
right?
agree. I have friends that host dinner parties that are very much an artistic
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah.
I feel like art can be anything that anything that in your imagination that you can bring to life.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I always say that, like, what's more creative than being an entrepreneur?
Oh,
Like,
really nothing, right? Like, I think it's nothing. Um, Also because there is, I believe in life, but there is no competition except in the competition with yourself.
yeah,
I'm always in competition with me because
yes,
I know what I don't know
yes,
and I know how little I know. And I'm always hungry and curious and wanting to learn more, try more, experience more, find out more. So it's a competition within
sure,
myself, and the same, within my business. It was always me with how can I outdo me?
right. Yeah, I think that in a fundamental sense, I think creativity is the opposite of reactivity.
Mm,
You can either react to everything that's happening around
mhm,
you, and you're always kind of following the rules, and you're always being defensive, and kind of living in a state of fear.
mhm.
So you're just following along and reacting to what's happening. But creativity is acting from the inside out.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about having sovereignty over your own consciousness. So whether that's creating your own business, I mean, again, opening up a new stream of revenue, that is
Mhm.
what's more creative than that. Um, so I feel like also developing a creative practice is very helpful because it helps us to navigate the unknown. When there's uncertainty and you don't know what to do, creativity is that place that you can act from and navigate uncertainty. So I feel like, especially now with the world being so chaotic, and so unknown and uncertain in so many ways, with artificial intelligence and all the technological changes that are coming down the road, um, it's more essential than ever to be creative. Not to say that we have to all make paintings or write poetry, but just to navigate the uncertainty and to build a new world in the midst of that uncertainty is the highest creative calling.
Yeah. I another line that really jumped out to me when I read your book, even if you don't make anything tangible, you create your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that goes to what you're saying. I believe for me, creativity is a lens that I look through. It isn't just what
Yeah.
I do with my hands. It is how I wake up in the morning and decide, what am I creating today? What opportunities am I creating for myself?
Yeah.
And what environment am I creating for myself? Do I want to be, crabby? Do I want to be crabby tabby, or do I
Right.
want to be optimistic, or what do I want? And that within itself is what we do in our lives, right? We're our own environment, and we create that all the time.
Yeah. And it's even how we show up in the world. Like
100%.
how do we present ourselves in the world, whether that's on social media or in our relationships, or when you're out in public. Like, what is the aura and the vibration that you are radiating? This is something
100%.
that we create. That's why, like, one of my favorite artists is the painter Andy Warhol.
Hmm.
And I like to say that Andy Warhol's greatest work of art was himself. Like, he cultivated a certain image and persona that was an extension of his own art as well. It kind of matched. Um, and he just that's why he became such an icon, is because he put as much kind of like cultivation into his own self as he did into his art, and he treated himself like a work of art. And that's why he just became this iconic representation of pop art in the 1960s. So I'm always, especially coming from a background in branding, it's like, a business there could be 10 businesses that do the exact same thing, but how they present themselves, the branding, the energy that goes into their communication, their marketing, the vibe, the culture that they are kind of building around the business, all of that is going to make a big difference, even though the products themselves or the services are all the same. It's how they're being presented and expressing themselves, and the vibration that they're sending out into the world through their own marketing and just branding.
Yeah, I mean, for me, creativity is opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
it gives me an opportunity in every moment, really, to always make that decision of how do I want to show up and what mindset do I want to bring,
Yes.
and how do I want to create this conversation? What is, it
Yes.
goes to intention, but what do I want to create, right? I sat down with it last night, honestly, before I spoke to you, because I was very excited and I read the book and I did my research and I was so jazzed about talking to you. And I sat down with my intention of what is my intention that I would like to happen from the conversation with James today. I put that into our conversation this afternoon, and that was how I've gone about creating my day. Right, that
Mm-hmm.
was the seed that was already done, and that was the creation of my day. And I think, um, if I'm hearing you correctly, especially when you're talking about moving through a world that is unfolding
Yeah.
and becoming new, and many layers are starting to blossom out and unfold for us, that our creativity can help to support us and sustain us in a better way, as well as sustain and support community around us.
Absolutely. 100%. And even like, here's one example of that I just thought of. It's like a lot of artists are maybe frustrated by the digital world that we live in, or the social media, and having to, the algorithms that are driving so much of this, um and artists feel frustrated about having their work seen. And like, one of the pivots that I took that was really one of the biggest in my own creative life was when I started making memes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm, some people like think that's funny, like to make memes. It's like not real art. Because I had a long background of being a poet, and I would write poetry, and like, poetry, people still read poetry. Poetry is still very relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But one question I asked myself was, how do you make poetry even more relevant in the age of social media and in the age of algorithms? And I
Memes.
started to apply my poetry and my philosophy and my like spiritual perspective. I started to apply that thinking to making internet memes. And what internet memes are usually something that's very like silly or like superficial, but I would try to apply like deeper thinking and spiritual insight to memes. And that's really, of anything that I've done, that's what kind of gave me the biggest reach. Is like when my memes would just go viral, and um my online presence grew so much from that. So just even having the courage to be like, well, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to forge a path where there isn't one, and find ways to play with all of the tools that are at our disposal, whether that's social media or AI, whatever the universe throws at us, we can take that and we can flip it and then turn it into something beautiful. Back to Andy Warhol,
Mm-hmm.
he made art out of consumerism.
Mm-hmm.
like that was something that the artist looked at and be like, oh, all this consumerism, all this pop culture. But then someone like Andy Warhol comes along and flips it and says, like, I'm going to make art with this.
Yeah.
And just whatever happens in our life, I feel is fodder for our creativity, and that includes all the negative things that happen to us. Like, I think that like having pain can be such a it can be such a beautiful place to pull creativity from. I like to say that art is shadow work that transmutes pain into beauty. So all of our life experiences, all of our trauma, all of our sadness, for me, such a great well to pull art from, because it's so real and it's so potent, and it gives us so much to work with. So I believe in just taking everything around us and using it as fodder for our own creative experimentation and expression.
Yeah, agreed. And it goes back to the purge that you talked about. When you're working through that, especially if you're carrying some emotions that can feel heavy and a burden, it's great to purge those. And I have shared this before. The reason I started this podcast is I felt like I had lost my creative mojo, and it
Mm.
was going through what we have all gone through in the past few years, which has been tumultuous and changing and rapidly changing. And I went through the loss of my partner of 27 years, which was
Mm.
challenging, right? And something I'm still navigating through. And I sat there saying, where is my creativity? What is my creativity now? It's new. I don't want it to be the same thing. I don't want to go backwards. I want to go forwards. What does that look like? And then started looking at people for inspiration or joy or some purging, and then decided, here is what I want to do: have conversations with other creatives and inspire other people to use what they have within them, because we all have the resources within us. We just need to know how to transfer those, transmute them, and then, broadcast it out to everyone out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and podcasting is such an art form.
Yeah.
Just the ability to ask the right questions and to curate your guests and to get the message out there. It's such a beautiful modern art form. So I love people tapping into that as a new form of creative expression, because there's so much that can come out of those long form conversations that you can't get from a social media post. So
Yeah.
I'm personally grateful for all of the podcast artists out there who have given me a platform to share whatever is on my mind. So thanks for leaning into that calling as your own creative journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the creativity that opens the opportunities. It's looking for
Mm.
them, or uh, following that little spark, which again is the intuitive piece, right? It's listening to that little intuitive hit that you have. For some of us, it's more of a poke than a tap. It's a little love tap or a really big poke that says, look over here, right? There's something interesting over here. And a lot of your work has addressed the challenges of living in a digital age that is very distracting at times and very loud at times. What do you see as the most pressing issues that are affecting our creativity and spirituality today? Because I believe the two are linked, even though not everyone makes the connection.
Yeah. No, they for sure are linked. I mean, I speak personally, but like my creativity is my spiritual practice. And like being an artist is my spiritual path, right? And when you think about the ability to make something out of nothing, like literally that's what art is. You're making something
Mm-hmm.
out of nothing. Like
Mm-hmm.
imagine like um like there's no book, and letter by letter, literally a book is written letter by letter and letter by letter this book comes into physical form, and then it exists in the world. Like it's so underrated how much of a miracle that is. I mean, it's just like you mentioned, you equated it to childbirth, and
Mm-hmm.
it's similar. It's like there's no baby, like there's no human, and then like one cell at a time, over the course of 9 months, that baby is created and born, and that is magic. That is a miracle, and our creativity is just the same. So for me, that I can't imagine anything more spiritual than bringing ideas to life, because I feel like we it's been said in various sacred texts that humans are made in the image of God, And people are like, well, what does that mean? Like, what does the image of God mean? And it's like, well, at its core, God is the creator, whatever that is, or it is the creation itself. So we're all aspects of that, and we make our art just the way that, you know, the universe makes us. So it's an energy that moves through us. So for that part of your question, yes, absolutely. For me, creativity and spirituality are intricately linked. And in terms of what is, you know, what are the obstacles that are keeping us from that creativity and that spirituality, I just feel like we live in a world that is very much in a place of confusion and distraction and illusion, frankly. Um, you know, I think that for a long time, um, you know, our spiritual experiences have been defined by these big organized religions, and that started to unravel in recent decades. Or, you know, um, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche
Mm-hmm.
famously proclaimed God is dead in the 1880s, and he didn't mean that some literal God in the sky had literally died, right? He meant that we as humanity have turned our attention away from this shared idea of God, um, and therefore it's our belief that makes something real. So if that was true in the 1880s, I think that's even more true now. I think that we have been disconnected from source, even from community. Our
Mm-hmm.
modern culture and civilization really has disconnected us from a sense of shared community. Like, I don't know about you, but like I don't really know my neighbors that live around me. I have a lot of, you know, I know people online all around the world, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know my own neighbors. Um, so I think that we have, you know, we have been taught to value things like productivity, following orders, um, you know, material achievements at the expense of anything else. It's like, think of all the, you know, the bankers that make tons and tons of money just by just kind of like playing the system,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're betting
Yeah.
on,
It's like Vegas.
um, yeah, like they're trading um just abstract numbers,
Yeah.
you know, and has no, they're not adding any value, but yet they're the ones that are getting super rich, right?
Yeah.
So I think the word I think it comes down to is just disconnection, and that's disconnection from our own self, our own soul. It's also disconnection from each other, and just like what really matters, right? And I think that's why the world is so lost right now, and I think that's why we're facing so much uncertainty, because I think that you know the old religions, the old political systems, even like the economic systems, even the universities, everything that was set up to like keep society going has kind of broken apart.
Yeah. It's
And
crumbling.
it's crumbling.
Yeah.
It has, and it was going to continue to
Yeah.
crumble. Um, so it's a huge crisis that we're in the middle of.
And
Um,
so exciting.
and so exciting
And
because
so exciting.
it's blue sky for
Yeah.
opportunities. Because I've realized this in my own work. The more I've stepped up and shared my own work on social media, in my books, I see the people responding to it being like, yes, we need this. And I'm like, oh, this is like just my thoughts, but like people are really resonating with them. And that's just taught me how people are starving for something real, something authentic, true leadership. And I feel like in a world where we don't have a lot of leaders that we can really trust, I feel like what I hope for and what I see unfolding is a decentralized um, network where we're all leaders in our own capacity, you know, working together. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of like looking up to a religious priest or a god in a book, or putting too much. I think we put way too much importance on this idea of who the president is. Like, that's just one person with one role. It's one job. There are millions of other jobs that we need to step up and serve our own role in.
Yeah.
So just stepping up and like having an interconnected network of leaders and of artists and of creators that we can all learn from each other and rely on each other. I think that's the only way to move forward. And we can only do that ourselves. So that's, again, why creativity is so important, is to be able to navigate that unknown and find where we're called to serve in a world that desperately needs true leadership and true vision and creativity.
Agreed. And also look at things in a different way. You know, I've been saying for a while in the classes I teach that energy is going to be the new currency. That I fully believe that. I believe it in what some may like to frame a woo way, and that's okay. I don't mind being woo. So if you want to call it woo, we'll call it woo. I call it fact that energy will be the new currency. And I mean that on how our energy vibrates with each other.
Yes.
And how it resonates with each other, as well as how we can produce things that are harnessing and utilizing our own internal energy and putting it out, which is our creativity, instead of relying on outside resources and outside things. So, what you're saying, you're singing to the choir, and I love it. And it also brings me into one of the things, again, many things, but one of the things I really enjoyed in the book was when you talked about the yin qualities and the yang qualities. And, you know, that felt like what you were talking about, the yin qualities of being and flow and femininity and feeling, and then the yang qualities of structure, thinking, making, action, right? More of what is thought of as masculine qualities, although they're fluid because they intersect, so they're really fluid. They're non-binary. But that's what it reminds me of, because I think that is true, and that means that we have to harness our intuition. We have to be more discerning as well.
1,000,000%. Yeah, and that was really the first idea that sparked the book, that sparked The Art of You, is I realized, like, oh, creativity, making art is, first of all, it's a creation ritual. And back to pregnancy that you mentioned, you know, that it takes an equal part of the feminine and the masculine coming together for creativity. So, and I started to unpack that idea. And it's like, okay, it's the yin and the yang of the universe. And these are equal and opposite energies. And, you know, yin is associated with being the feminine. It's being receptive. It's listening. It's stillness. I call it creative being. And the yang is what's associated with being masculine. It's action. It's doing. It's making. And we live in a society that's heavily reliant on the yang. It's like productivity, go, go, go. And for centuries, the yin has been suppressed across society. And this has meant the suppression of women, but it also, you know, the yin exists within us all. So it hurts everyone. And there's no creativity without yin. So yin would be intuition, slowing down and giving yourself time to rest and contemplate. Like, quiet contemplation is such a cheat code for creativity. Because what are you going to pull from? Art doesn't start in the physical world with what you're making. It starts deep within ourselves. And we need that intuition. We need, you know, it's about emotions, like using our emotions to fuel our art. It's about using our imagination, these things that can't be seen, that can't be measured. So they get disregarded. but there's no creativity without yin. In fact, that it is half of creativity. It is half of the world, and it is half of ourselves is the yin. There, it's 50-50, folks. Yin and yang, feminine, masculine. We need them all. And then you need the discipline. You need the masculine, because, and the book is really designed to, wherever you are in your creative process, some of us are more in the yin, some of us are more in the yang, and you might be someone who's very in the yin, and you're have a strong intuition, and you're very inspired, and you feel like you're always in flow. But if you don't have the yang to balance it out, you're going to struggle to finish your projects and to launch them and to show up consistently and to actualize your ideas. So you need that. But if you're too much on the yang, which would be like me working in the advertising industry, like it's go, go, go. You're going to be productive, but after a while, you're going to be running on fumes because you're not tuning into that yin, and your work is going to be lacking purpose and deeper meaning. And it's going to be very like cold and superficial. So I think being an artist is, I feel like artists are shapeshifters that blend the binary. Artists need to dip into the yin, but they also need to dip into the yang. They need to be in connection with their intuition, but they also need to be committed and show up consistently with that dedication and build that creative endurance. So that's really the book is designed half yin, half yang, to really help everyone tap into the full alignment of their own creative expression, so they can actualize the highest version of the artist that they are.
No, I love that, because it laid out a really great roadmap for people, again, wherever they are in their journey, to look at it in a different way, because we've all met those creatives that are just incredible creative beings that have these wonderful ideas and processes come through their head all the time, but have zero execution, and they don't know how to execute. And then there are these amazing people that know how to get shit done and know how to bust their behind and are very action orientated and good with that, but they have lost the art of rest and reflection and enjoyment, actually, and smelling the roses and seeing what's going on. So it truly is a balance of both that I think is so incredibly important, and that I love that you laid out. And again, this will be tagged on my social media for our podcast, to take you to James's book where you can find it, because he lays it out in such a great way with diagrams as well as reading, because we know that not everyone wants to read anymore. So there are great diagrams that you can cheat sheet it a little bit, but I'm telling you to read it. And one of the things that I loved as we're wrapping up is, one of my other favorite expressions that I use in my classes all the time is that words are spells. Every time we say a word, we cast a spell. And when we say a word, I don't just mean the auditory part of the word that we hear out loud. I mean the internal vibration of that word, of what we say to ourselves, is just as much of a magic spell as what we say to other people. So we need to change our language to change our lives. And one of the things that I enjoy, reading in the book is, you talk about our magic is real, but we've been taught all the wrong tricks, which I love. And this quote is, "The art of creation, making something out of nothing, is equivalent to magic, and each person is a magician. This is true for the accountant as much as the artist. To be alive is to be in a state of constant co-creation with the universe. We create our relationships, our careers, our home environments, our routines, our belief systems, and the message we share with the world, which we broadcast either subtly or overtly in every conversation and social media post."
Facts.
Facts.
Yeah.
Right. And I enjoyed that because I want to encourage everyone listening to look at yourself as a creative. You may not create what you think of as art, right? As in a tangible good, or you may not be a hairdresser or in the beauty industry or a poet or an author. But I have no doubt that you are creating not just your life, but you are creating something and you are passionate about something. And if you can tap into that and outwardly show that creation, right? And purge it, birth it, whatever word feels comfortable for you, as what James and I have talked about, that it will vastly change your being.
I could not agree more. I could
Right?
not agree more. It's been true in my own life, and I've seen it true in so many others. You are born to create. Doesn't matter what it is. But for me, that's the most fulfilling thing I've done in my life is just commit to a path of creativity and then pivot and expand and explore and experiment. You don't have to have it all figured out. It's like when you start on a journey, you don't know where you're going to end up. And every creative process for me is like going in on a journey into the unknown. And you just put one foot in front of the other and find your way as you go. So
Let it be
don't worry
messy.
too much. Let it be messy. Don't worry too much about seeing the end from the beginning. And I even say that mistakes are portals to unexpected destinations. Right?
Mm.
If we have too much expectation of what we're creating, what we want it to be, we're not letting unanticipated directions come in. So even a mistake can lead us in a new direction. So it really is about exploration
Mm-hmm.
and curiosity and
Mm.
experimentation more so than like, oh, you're either talented or you're not. And it's like, no, like
100%.
first of all, talent is something that's developed. Yes, there's always some geniuses who are born with amazing talent, but that is the vast minority. It's not about talent because first of all, some great art is very messy and sloppy. It's like some people like classical music, some people like punk rock music, and that raw,
Mm-hmm.
gritty, messy art can be just as powerful as this like ornate classical music.
100%. I love that. Here's a question that I ask everyone. I'm really interested on your take on this.
Mhm.
Is creativity nature or nurture?
It's a great question, and it's honestly both because creativity is our nature because, like I said, I think that it is an energy that moves through us. I mean, if you look at the human body and how it's designed, like we have imagination and intuition, which connect us with these portals of inspiration, and we have these minds that can, you know, think about things and ponder things and consider things and look at our hands our hands are made to build things and to make things and to hold pens, and we have these thumbs that allow us to craft
Mm-hmm.
the unknown or the unseen into the physical world. So it is literally our nature, but we also must nurture that nature because you can't just say I'm a creative by nature if you're not actually committing to doing it.
Yeah.
So we need the nurturing. We need to honor our nature by nurturing it to make sure we're honoring it and we're living up to it and we're actualizing it.
Yeah. I love that question because everyone has a different answer and it's always really interesting. And I think it also helps us to think, right? To explore a little deeper within ourselves and a little deeper piece of ourselves and our own creative landscape. This was such a delight. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much for saying yes. I was so excited to say the man that actually wrote the book on creativity is here with us today on Creative Thrive. So thank you. For anyone that has not read James's book, The Art of You, please make sure you go and check it out and get it. It is just such a great companion wherever you are on your creative journey, whether you're, waist deep in it, whether you feel like you're drowning in it, or whether you're just sticking your toe in and exploring a little bit more. There is something in there that I think is really great. So thank you so much, James.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on your show. It was great chatting with you today.
As we wrap up our chat with James McCrae on Creative Thrive, his insights remind us that creativity isn't just about making things. It's not an end result. It's a way of being that nurtures us, and it's how we self-express. James encourages us to embrace change and to challenge ourselves, beautifully stating it's not about being good at creativity, it's about creativity being good for us. This idea reshapes our approach to creativity, urging us to respond from within and to turn reactivity into innovation. But the gem for me, creative endurance. James reminds us that the beauty of creativity lies in the journey, the process, and our relentless self-expression. It's not about the outcome, but the endurance and creativity that genuinely enriches our lives. And it's a reminder for us to keep going and to not give up. A big thank you to James for diving deep with us today. And to our listeners, let's hold on to the concept of creative endurance. Your creativity is a profound expression of your inner world. So nurture it, share it, and let it thrive. And if you would like to explore your creative and personal growth further, please join me at Thrive Hive, where we explore these themes, going deeper with live monthly classes. Learn more at thrivehive.co. And please support Creative Thrive by following, liking, and subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Your engagement helps us to continue to illuminate the paths of these inspiring creatives. Until we meet again, keep nurturing your creative spirit and don't hesitate to let it soar. See you next time on Creative Thrive.